It's 3 o'clock, I believe. And good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to this Gaming in Holland webinar in which we will take a closer look at what yesterday's lower house election means for the regulated Dutch gambling market. There's certainly a lot to discuss. In this webinar, we will try to answer questions such as what can we expect from the newly elected lower house? And are the proposals of former State Secretary Teun Struikens still on the table? And what will happen to the previously announced gambling tax hike? We might even try to get an idea of what government will get.
I was talking.
But before we continue with today's webinar, I would like to thank our strategic partners and sponsors, which you can see listed on the screen. Thank you very much for your generous support. We would not have been able to do this without your support. Thank you again. And as always, our webinars are interactive. If you would like to submit a question to one of our speakers, you can do so through the Slido app. Scan the QR code that you see on the screen. Next, enter the event code #GIH and finally select the Q&A tab on the top of your screen. You can also upvote somebody else's question. Questions will be addressed and if possible answered during the audience Q&A at the end of this webinar. With us today we have two expert speakers that I would like to welcome. First of all, Bert Bakker, who is former MP and managing partner at Holla and Partners. Bert, welcome.
Thank you.
As well as very welcome. As well as Justin Franssen, partner and co-founder at Franssen, Tolboom, Advocaten. Welcome today, Justin. How are you?
Thank you. I'm in excellent shape today, Willem.
That's good. And here to moderate their discussion, we have our very own Gaming Holland content director, Jeroen Lamers, who will take out the microphone for me here. Welcome all, and thank you for being here. Jeroen, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Willem, for this kind introduction, and Bert, Justin, welcome once again. So let's dive right into our first question, which is how can the election outcome and the resulting allocation of seats in the lower house be expected to impact the gambling industry? But before we actually start answering these questions, let's have a look at the election outcome first. So here you see an overview of the seats every party has managed to get. I should note that D66, the Liberal Progressives, they are actually in the lead, still 26 seats, but a little bit bigger than Geert Wilders' Freedom Party. After that, we have the People's Party for Freedom and Democracy with 22 seats, who are the business-friendly VVD. Then Labour Green Left with 20 and 18 for the Christian Democrats. And finally, Ja 21, which is also a far-right party with 9 seats. And those are the only ones who are probably going to be relevant today. So with this out of the way, Bert, Justin, how can the election outcome be expected to impact the gambling industry?
Yes, well, actually it's still quite exciting because as we are speaking, the count is still going on because the two bigger parties are very close still to each other. But in fact, it doesn't mean much because the PVV party of Geert Wilders is really outside of reality. The new reality is that D66 is the largest relevant party. So they will be in the lead to start forming a new government. That will take a long time. And yes, of course, meanwhile, the discussion on gambling policy will continue. You might just expect to become it a bit more pragmatic than it was. It was really ideologically and emotionally driven. And I think, and I hope, that it will be a bit more realistic and rational and pragmatic. But we still have to see of that, of course, and it will take a while to make a more thorough elaboration of the situation.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Bert.
maybe to add to that, Bert, you were saying it's PVV is the or D66 is the relevant party. So even and I think 99% of the votes have now been counted. We just a little over an hour ago we got in the votes from Amsterdam. The difference is really, really small. I think there's 15,000 votes more for D66 than for PVV, but still, it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing, if you will. So the final results will come during the course today, I guess. But even if PVV would become the biggest party, let's assume that for a moment, they're not relevant to the extent that there is a so-called cordon sanitaire around PVV. So the other parties already excluded cooperation with PVV, which means that ultimately D66 will be in the lead. Also, what we can say, I think this is, whatever is going to happen, it's an historic result. I think it's the first time in history that the largest party, being probably D66 as things stand now, gets less than 30% or less than 30 seats. That's historic. What is also quite historic is that most likely D66 is going to deliver the prime minister. So, but it has been extremely interesting yesterday. Both Bert and myself, we have been watching until deep in the night at the election results. And yesterday, the gap between PVV and D66 was, I think, was 2 seats. And then this morning, the information dripped in that, you know, it's going to be an extremely close call. Also, what we have to consider is that I think the votes from Dutch nationals from abroad, so who are voting by letter, are yet to be counted. So what we're doing today, and that's the big fat disclaimer, is crystal ball gazing for starters.
All right,
Exactly.
that makes sense. However, when it comes to gambling policy, we don't start at zero. So until a new government is formed, the current government will remain in office in the caretaker role. And earlier this year, then State Secretary Teun Struiken announced a new vision on gambling policy, which, among other things, includes a proposal for cross-operator deposit limits. So how will the implementation of this new policy proceed? But again, before we start answering this question, let's take a look at some of the proposals that Struiken made earlier. So on the left, you see some of his concrete plans, and on the right, a very rough and also, I would say, ambitious timeline. All right, with that out of the way, let's try to answer the question. I'll start with you, Bert. How will the implementation of this policy proposal proceed now?
Well, in fact, of course, we have a caretaker government without much of a mandate. On the other hand, his letter earlier this year had quite a lot of support in Parliament, including the parties now having won the elections. So I think most of the things will continue for now, at least, until we have a new government. And continue, that is to say, the preparation of the new proposals in terms of regulation and lawmaking will continue. But of course, the new situation in Parliament will be taken into account, and the fact that we have a new Secretary of State will be taken into account, because, as you know, the cabinet fell, and the former State Secretary for Gambling Policies was replaced by a new one, who's much more liberal and much more rational. So it is very well possible that it will take a while. It was already a very optimistic planning and timing. It will take a while more. It will take some time to make a new draft bill. And while such things are getting ready early next year or so, there will still be talks about the new cabinet. So it will start interfering. Conclusion, it will take a while, but in general, not many things will change yet. the situation in the new government will be different, very different from the past one. And then it will, of course, be very important who will be the new guy or woman, of course, in charge, and how the new parliament will first start talking about gambling policies. But it will take a while.
So maybe to follow up on that, let's talk a bit about the timeline. So according to the original proposals, there would be a draft bill ready in 2026, so in a few months' time. Do you think that is still realistic?
Not really. There is a lot of lower regulation announced to be adjusted and become more restrictive, and new legislation should be made. That was already a very optimistic planning, and I think that now with a new situation without actually a mandated government and a new government on its way, it will not fasten the situation. So I think we can expect that it still will take a while, and once there is a draft bill, for example, still a lot of consultations and advising by the Council of State, etc., has to be done before it can be drafted to Parliament. And Parliament will take its time. So I think it would be too optimistic to think that early 2027 everything would be ready. I think it will be later. How much later, of course, I don't know. And that also depends on the new government.
Right, thank you. Justin, as we and the audience were able to see, some of the proposals by Struiken included cross-operator deposit limits, a minimum age increase for the riskier forms of gambling. It's not entirely certain what that means, or what counts as high risk for a high risk form of gambling. So assuming these proposals make it through Parliament, get incorporated into lower regulation, how will this impact the industry, you think?
Yeah, first, I'm not sure whether we should assume they will pass like they currently do. I mean, the general trend in The Hague, and also if you look at election programs, is that, let's say, the anti-gambling sentiment is at its peak. You could say that. So I don't expect a landslide change from the proposals of Struiken. Having said that, there is a lot of uncertainties here. There's a couple of things we need to consider. One is what is going to happen in the coalition discussions. To me, it's likely, and I've had a pre-discussion with Bert this morning, that, I mean, NSA went from 20 seats to 0. They, as you know, are the strongest opponents to especially the remote game and gambling in general, but they wanted to repeal the Remote Gaming Act. They're gone, right? Christian Union is getting smaller. The only party which has some relevance in the discussion is CDA, who are anti-gambling as well. They want to repeal the legislation as well. But those, CDA only has 19 seats. Then we have D66, VVD, hopefully, we'll end up in the right-wing coalition government, or center-right, I should say. And I think they will not make it. They will, that point will not make it, the full repeal of the Remote Gaming Act. So what is going to happen in the coalition? Is this something which will make its way to the negotiation table? Yes or no? It could be, they leave it completely open. And then I think, as Bert rightly mentions, the individual who is going to take the seat at the Ministry of Justice, being the Minister or the State Secretary, is of extreme importance. Just look at Fred Teven back in 2011 when he revealed his gaming policy. I mean, it couldn't be more different from what Struiken produced. So that State Secretary certainly will have an impact. Then again, if that State Secretary wants to go for a different direction of travel, he still needs to pass, of course, the Council of Ministers, the Ministerraad, who can amend or adjust the vision of the incoming State Secretary. And then, of course, there's Parliament. So My expectation is that as things stand now, that let's say the gist of what Struiken has proposed will probably survive. But at the same time, as Bert also mentions, there's lower regulation, but there is also primary legislation which needs to be changed. This provides the industry, as well as public affairs companies, the ability to influence the decision making process.
Yeah.
So there is an opportunity. There's a clear opportunity now, also because I think the formation of a new cabinet is going to take some time for a variety of reasons, to maybe soften the line of Struiken.
Maybe I can add one thing to that. I really think there is a new window for the industry to present itself. Reputation has been very bad due to members of parliament who were quite radical in rejecting all kinds of gambling policies, like Mirjam Bakker. She actually wanted a lobby ban completely, and the Socialist Party wanted the same. But they have all lost seats and relevance. So having a situation in which two liberal parties are quite large, D66 and the VVD, and the right-wing liberal Ja21 might become very relevant. There is an opportunity, I would say, if well taken up and handled, to enhance your reputation, which is of course very much necessary to in trying to influence some of these proposals you just showed us, Jeroen.
Yes.
Among which the crossover, how is it called in English? The cross operator deposit limits. That is, I think, a very bad thing for industry, and I see chances to put that on the table again and maybe come to another conclusion.
All right.
Yes,
So
and
in
I think
the
objectively, sorry, you want to add here maybe, objectively, there are quite many markers that were the direction of travel the policy is currently going is not the right way. I mean, just to mention a few things, tax is going down. We've seen the report of the Gambling Authority demonstrating that the tax rate of 37.8, which is applicable as of the 1st of January, we'll speak about that later, but is going to have a detrimental effect on the sector. We have seen the live results of that in the past year. Especially the land-based market was hit. We've seen closures of arcades. We've seen companies even going into close to insolvency. We've seen at least 3 remote operators handing back their license because of the increased pressure on regulation and tax. And so far, all the if you will, the lobby efforts of the industry have fallen to deaf ears largely. But with this new composition, there are chances, there are opportunities. But you have to be very diligent in approaching. And maybe over to you. You have to be very diligent in those contacts.
Speaking of tax, maybe that is this is a good moment to move on to the next question. So next year already in January 2026, the gambling tax rate will be increased further. That's the plan. That's already present in legislation. Could that tax hike still be reversed? What are your thoughts?
Oh, technically yes, but in practice no, because the government doesn't make any initiatives to change that. It will be already decided half of November. Third week of November, it's on the table in the second chamber of parliament. And so far, well, I have seen some parliamentary questions on the effectiveness of the effects actually of the increase of 1st of January this year, and what a further increase would mean for the sector and for the profitability, etc. Now, those questions came back with very negative answers. Government not considering at all to make a change to that, and it hasn't been followed by new initiatives from the side of Parliament to get rid of that second step. So I think it will just be continued like that. But on the other hand, I must be honest, I haven't seen any initiatives from the market either to start influencing that. Of course, there were talks, etc., but that hasn't led to much difference. So I think
So if
we will
I'm
just
hearing you
have to
correctly,
digest that second step.
there is a window of opportunity right now that's 2-3 weeks long, and if nothing happens, then that proposed tax hike will simply happen.
Yeah, the window of opportunity I mentioned earlier was in well, thinking about the coming months and the negotiations, etc. When it comes to the tax increase on the 1st of January, the final decision will be made half of November. And if you really want to change something there, you have to hurry up. And it's not very likely, I must say.
Okay. So, Justin, the tax hike will almost certainly happen. How will this impact the industry, you think?
Yeah, to add to that, one, I concur with Bert, but I think I already gave my view at the Gaming in Holland conference in June on the tax hike, and I was negative about the options there to get that reversed. But how will it impact the industry? Well, look at the report the gambling authority released on that not too long ago. They had a very nice overview where they showed tax rate of 29% and the current tax rate, which is 34.2, and then 37.8, and they certainly demonstrated that an average operator would end up writing red numbers. But it's not just the tax rate. Think about it. I mean, we've had the amount of restrictions have been stacking up ever since the market opened up, as you know, not the last place with the deposit limits and so forth. So add the increased tax rate to that and add some additional measures which are in the pipeline. Yeah, I think I've recently called it a car crash in slow motion. And that's what it is. So we're already seeing the real life effects of that. We're already seeing that the tax income is going down. We're already seeing the rise of the black market, which is more than half of GGR, which is going to the black market. And yeah, the
And
future
especially
will
the
tell, but
land,
I'm afraid it will only increase.
and especially the rise of the illegal market, of the black market, should be should be and could be a reason for Parliament and for policymakers to shift their mind on this. But the point is, then you have to bring it up because when nobody does anything, it will just continue. And whether or not it is, it's like many other sensitive regulated areas, like whatever prostitution or alcohol or tobacco, etc. The train will go on and on until somebody says, or a majority says, we should look in a different way to this. And I think it's quite urgent to have this done, because if the legal market crashes, like in the slow motion car crash of Justin, you only trigger the illegal market to get up. And it's very hard for politicians to understand, because they look in through glasses of ideology and emotions and sentiments, etc. But here are the hard figures, and somebody has to, well, just show that into their face.
So you mentioned Bert that somebody should do something about this. Somebody should speak up. Let's put a pin in that and come back to this a little bit later. So, which means that it's time for the next question. We've had a brief look at the outcome of the elections. Could we show the next question, please, Sebas? Thank you. So, which government coalitions are possible considering the election outcome?
Well,
And maybe more specifically, what are you hoping for? And this is, I'm aiming this question at
well,
both you, Bert.
when you count the seats, in fact, there are only two feasible options, and one of them is the most feasible. That's what we call the broad center coalition, meaning you start with the Green Left Socialist Party plus the Left Liberal D66 Party being the biggest, the Christian Democrat Party in the middle, in the center, and the more right-wing Liberal Party VVD at the right. And that has, I think, about 89 seats, which is way over a majority of 76 seats. So that's the easiest when you just look at the counts. But politically, it's a very tough coalition. The left part of it doesn't want to cooperate with the right part of it. The right part doesn't want to cooperate with the left part of it. And it will take a lot of time to get it off the table. And still at this time, I think that a coalition on the center-right coalition, led by D66 plus the Christian Democrats plus the VVD plus Ja21 and then one or two more needed to make a majority in both the second and the first chamber of parliament, is in the end more likely. Of course, there's a lot of political things to say about that, but I will not do that because it's outside of the topic. But when it comes to gambling policies, that second option would be better, because then let's say the anti-gambling forces are limited to the Christian Democrat Party, and the others, well, they are more rational and pragmatic and also restrictive, but, well, open for debate, so to say. So that's a long answer because it's always very hard to make a coalition in the Netherlands, especially the last 20 years or so, and it will be the same now. But I think that in the end, the center-right coalition will be the most attractive for all parties together.
Yeah,
Thank
couldn't
you,
agree
Bert.
more.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Bert. What I will obviously try is to go, and this is also what the leader of D66 hinted on last night. He wants to, I think he will talk to GroenLinks, PvdA first. But then the problem is that they also need VVD. VVD already mentioned that they, in principle, don't want to cooperate in a government with GroenLinks, PvdA. So they will do that ritual dance. They will do it. I hope
it will take a few months.
Oh yeah, it's going to take time for sure. Yeah. They will do that ritual dance, which is a very long dance, maybe until even after Christmas. Who knows? Then that will fail. At least that's what I hope. And then what's in my book is combination of D66, VVD, CDA, Ja21. Until yesterday, that would be enough. But if you count all those seats together, it's 75, so it's not a majority. So they need one extra party, which could be BBB, Boer-Burgerbeweging. I'm not even going to translate that, but anyways. So the Farmers Party. There you go. Thank you. I think they're at what, 2 or 3 seats. They lost, but they have 2 or 3 seats. But they're quite pragmatic and approachable, and they have no, let's say, clear anti-view on gambling whatsoever. They're approachable. I think, Bert. That's your view, right? So that would be a combination of 5 parties. Who would then have a majority. And then we end up with a center-right government, which is, under the current circumstances, the best possible solution.
Okay.
But like I said, you see, it is quite complicated, because if you need 5 parties, that might mean that it would become very unstable. On the other hand, I think a coalition through the middle, including the Green Left and Socialist Party, would be very unstable as well.
Okay. So another thing that was briefly touched upon already is the importance of the individual outlook of the minister or state secretary who's going to be in charge of gambling policy in the new government. So how important exactly is it? How much leeway does an individual state secretary or minister have to influence policy in his department? Maybe Bert, you can take up this question.
Well, quite a lot actually. And of course, it depends on the coalition in which you operate. It depends on the fact whether or not in the coalition agreement, the governing agreement of the coalition, many things are written down on gambling policy. If many things are decided already during negotiations on the coalition agreement, of course, your space to move from that is a bit restricted. On the other hand, most governing agreements do not have much point on gambling policy, so then it's in the open, and the actual person who is responsible for gambling policies has more space than that. Actually, you have seen in 2011 the policies that are now withdrawn officially by the letter of Struiken last year, or earlier this year. This person in 2011 really changed the look upon gambling policies. It was Fred Teven, and he was very liberal, and he was a very enthusiastic player of poker online, etc. So that depends. And later on, we have seen state secretaries and ministers who were not interested, who were not really, not just interested, but not really on topic either. So they were easily following Parliament, or like Struiken, they were very restrictive because they were from a party that said you should actually withdraw all online legislation and ban it altogether. So yes, it depends a lot which person you have, and that is very unpredictable. Because first the coalition negotiations, then you compose a cabinet with persons, and then you divide the actual tasks. So that will take until summer. And meanwhile, we have this caretaking state secretary on gambling, and he is quite approachable and quite liberal.
All right. I would like to return briefly to a thing you mentioned just a few minutes ago. You said somebody should speak up. So there is, I think, at least an opportunity that things might go better for the industry in The Hague in the coming months or even longer. But you said somebody should speak up. Who should be that person, and how can the industry through that person or persons influence gambling policy? Any thoughts on that? Maybe Justin, you have some ideas.
Well, it's a simple question, but I'm afraid the answer isn't too easy. The problem is that the discussion on channelization doesn't resonate anymore in The Hague. It's like you sound like a broken record, right? If you say, well, the tax increase is leading to dechannelization and the black market is on the rise and so forth. Albeit that there is, plenty of evidence within the EU to show for that argumentation. Look at Italy, look at Germany, for instance. What is needed is a prudent approach, because a lot of politicians are, over the years, they have been bombarded by, lobbyists and operators and so forth. So the approach should be very prudent. One, it should be unified, and I'm extremely glad that Vena Locano have decided to sort of join forces. That is, of course, an exceptionally good development. I'm hoping that also, ultimately the VAN, if that is possible, also, ultimately you need one overarching institute to talk to government, but in a very prudent way. There is a task, I think, for that organization, or maybe at this point, those two organizations. At the same time, I think there's also what we've seen is that the gambling authority themselves, they've been very sensible in what they have been doing under the leadership of Mr. Groothuizen. They've been very, very sensible in what they have stated publicly on, the concerns they have on the complete advertising ban, the concerns they have around the tax hike, all of that. And whilst they're an independent regulatory body, I think there is also a role for our regulator, maybe not just to do a straightforward lobby, but to explain further to politicians the effects of what they're suggesting the market should look like. So it's the industry as well as the regulator to an extent. Bert, maybe you have some.
Yeah, I said somebody should step up. Actually, I do not mean a person, somebody, but well, the market should step up because as far as I can oversee, the discussion of the last 2 years have pretty much paralyzed the market to start influencing the justice ministry and certainly politics. It was very hard to enter the discussion with politics, etc. It was not at all easy to do so, and that has paralyzed a little bit, for one thing. The second thing is that the gap between the public view, the political view on gambling policies, and your view on gambling policies has only grown. And you have many facts and arguments on your side, the tax levels, the black market chances, etc., the channelization, and many things, and they just do not want to listen. But what they do is destroy a legal sector and give room to an illegal sector. And that should at some point become part of the discussion again between the market, the industry, and let's say policymakers in a broad sense. So both the ministry and politicians, the minister or state secretary, etc. And well, that attempt should be made, I think, to get closer to each other in an attempt to change things, because there are worse limitations on the shelf, and if they get off the shelf and are implemented, things are only getting worse. So yes, I think there's a reason to try once more to get on the table where actually you were shoven off. And there are chances now that, well, a lot of people who were calling the shots in the last few years are now gone, and new people are stepping up.
Okay.
So
Well,
if you
that
want to
is
do it, then do it now.
that is very helpful. So this is a time to try and influence policy again. Okay. So we have time for one more
Yes, but not
question,
in the
which
but
we
not
should
in the old way.
not in the
Not
old
in
way.
the old
That
way.
makes
Like bombarding them with letters and telephone calls, etc. That won't work. Do it more clever.
okay. More clever. That is a challenge, I think. So this brings us to our final question of today, and I will. Yeah, we're sort of running late a little bit, so I would prefer if you could answer this briefly. I'll start with you, Justin. Looking at the outcome of yesterday's election, best and worst case scenarios.
Well,
I couldn't resist already giving my the wished coalition, which is a center right coalition. That's probably the best case. Worst case would be the other option with GroenLinks.
Yeah. In short, I agree totally.
That is easy. That is easy. Okay, so the industry should hope for a center-right coalition and no Labour, no Green left.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so I think this brings us to our audience Q&A. I have to grab a second screen to see if we have any questions that need answering. So yeah, I think we have time for two questions. We already talked a bit about the tax hike that is coming in 2026, but what about gambling tax in 2027? If that tax rate needs to go down, what should happen, and when should it happen?
Well, you should start now. Uh, because all taxes for 2027 will be discussed on the table early 2026. And when you want a new majority to change course, you really have to put that up together with the other important points in upcoming gambling policies you want to change. Do you want less restrictions, or do you want the restrictions on the table get off the table, etc.? Then you should start now in making contact and creating a position and a better reputation in the eyes of politicians. I'm not saying that you have a bad reputation, but in the eyes of politicians, you do. So you should start building up that reputation again, and only then you can probably make real successful proposals to change tax policies again.
Thank you. So, second question is for you, Justin. You mentioned that the cross-operator deposit limits that former State Secretary Struiken wanted to introduce might not happen at all. But besides that, is that a technology that's even feasible? Can we do this
I'm not
without
sure if I said
taxation?
it. Sorry, Jeroen, but I don't think I said it's not going to happen. Did I?
Well, less likely to happen, I think you said.
No, I don't believe that I said so. There might be what I said. Maybe to explain myself here, I think there might the sharp edges of the proposals might be taken away, but I don't believe there is support now at this stage to get rid of the overarching limits. So yeah, I can be brief on that.
Well, technically, it's quite complex.
Well, technically, it's a nightmare, I think.
Yeah. And in that you could find reason to, well, maybe replace it by another proposal.
And I think it should be replaced by another proposal. When we talk to operators, which we regularly do, is that besides the tax hike, they really see this as quite problematic. So yeah, that certainly needs attention in the upcoming discussions with politics.
Now, the point is, you are not in the lead in those discussions, and you should try to get into the lead in such discussions again, because you have been for a very long time, let's say in the 2010s and early 2020s, and that got lost in already in the first months after the new legislation was implemented in 2021, because of all the commercials, because of the emotions of politicians and the emotions in society, etc. And well, one after another restrictive measure was taken, and in fact you cannot influence them anymore, and some even want a lobby ban. Well, that will not happen. But you still have to become a reliable and, well, charming participant to the discussion again.
Okay, I think that is a very positive note to conclude this Q&A session section on. So with this, I've come at the end of my part. Willem, back to you. Oh, before I do that, Bert, Justin, thank you very much for enlightening us.
You're welcome.
Willem.
Yeah, real highlight this webinar. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Bert. And of course, thank you, Jeroen, for moderating this. With this, I think we've come to the end of this Gaming in Holland webinar. We hope you found it useful. A link to a full recording of today's webinar will be shared in a post-webinar email that we're sending out as soon as possible. As always, let's keep in touch. If you can show the last slide quickly, if you're doing your planning for next year, please save the date for our conference, Thursday, the 4th of June. Same location as the last few years, the Royal Tropical Institute in Amsterdam, where the industry will gather again. As I said, you will receive a link to the YouTube video shortly. If you have not signed up to our newsletters, please do so at the website gamingin.eu. Let's keep in touch in any possible way and see you soon. Thank you very much.